Somebody will ask me something, and I said, I don't know, maybe I better crank this up because it ran down. And
so
I'm going to be 50 now. Don't I act like I'm 50?
Do you act like you're 50? You act pretty. You're really sharp.
I said that to somebody the other day because they were saying something about getting older, and I said, "Do I look 50?" And okay, and looked at me. What'd you say? And I said, I was trying to see if you were listening, but I'm wondering about 90. Do I act like 90?
No, you act younger than 90. I wouldn't say you're a day over 75.
Oh, it's not a day over 75. Okay.
Yeah, really. I wouldn't have guessed you'd be 90. You don't look 90. I would say 70s is what I would say.
Oh,
but,
yeah. Well, anyway, that's nice. I don't know. It just seemed like it kind of went pretty fast to get up to 90. I wasn't ready for that.
Yeah. Well, let's see. I guess, we go back to your kids a little bit.
All righty.
So if I understand, Bill, did you call him Bill or?
I called him Bill or Billy.
Yeah.
When he was littler, he was Billy, and as he got older, he was Bill.
Now, he had a car wreck.
Yes, I'll tell you what that happened when, the reason that he was here. See, first of all, Bill went to college after he got out of high school. He wanted to be a coach. So he came here to K-State, and he was going to work for to go to college, because we didn't at that time think we could afford to college. Okay, but anyway, he worked at the dairy barn where they had 100 cows to milk. He knew the whole procedure for that, so he worked there. But he had to get up at 4 in the morning, and he couldn't have hardly time to study, and because he said the guys all come a-flocking in the evening to visit with he and his buddy that were going to school. They both were from Waterville. So, okay, at Christmas time, he decided, I want to go to college, but I don't believe I'm going to take and stay with it. If you'll, the Christmas present I want you to sign that I can go to college, or to the service. Said, I don't want to be in the Army, I want to be in the Navy. So he went to the Navy, and while he was there, went through all of the rigmarole that they go through. He ended up in Hawaii, and he worked, he was in a big hospital. He was there in New York in a hospital before they sent him there. And so he worked in the hospital. And then, as time went on, he was getting a lot of, so he could fill prescriptions, and he was getting quite a bit of training. But his 3 years were up, and so he was planning, he wrote back to college, could he come back and go in where he left off? And they wrote him a letter, they'd be glad for him to. So he was coming home then to go to college. When the Navy stepped in, they took 3 officers and him, took a cruise over all the countries and in an airplane. He laughed, he said, I was in the Navy all that while and never got in a boat. They'd probably shot him if he'd have said boat instead of ship. But anyway, so the thing of it was, in the meantime, Larry had already gotten in the Navy. And so they met in Hawaii, and the Navy let him and Larry have 2 weeks together, and they got to, and he had bought a little car, and it was the Metropolitan foreign. We could park it on our front porch, it was so small. So anyway, they had a wonderful time for those 2 weeks, and so after he then was going to come back, then they gave him this trip then with these officers, and they told him that if you would re-up into the Navy, we'll give you, you can go back to the States, to Maine, and you would be studying like for doctoring, but you'd be for pharmacy, and you'll get a doctor's degree, and you can get that from the Navy, and it won't cost you anything. So he took up on that. So he was on his road home, and he had always was really good to meet young fellows, and that were he liked to be close to them if they had family. And they, two of them, of these men that he met, had babies, and he's the godfather for two. They named him Bill and William, just like your Billy, like that he was. And so anyway, he was on his way to Maine when he came. He got to come home. They shipped his car then to back to the States for him, and so he was on his road to Maine, but came by here at Manhattan. We were here, and so he then, Richard, of course, idolized him, because Richard was at the same, well, he was 10 years younger, and but he was about 15 when this happened, and Bill was 22, and when the accident happened. Well, anyway, that happened between here and Waterville, and it so happened that Billy didn't make it, and but Richard did, and he then was in the hospital in Marysville a long time.
Richard was?
Richard was,
Yeah.
because they had to wire his shoulder, and he had to wire his arm here.
So did he, from what I understand, it was, I think I know where it happened, it was,
On that,
he just rode off the end of the road, is that what happened, or?
well, there was that sharp, they've changed it.
Right, it's a curve
It
now.
was a big
It used
curve.
to be,
It was a bad thing.
yeah, it used to be
Yes, that's
right
where
angles.
That's where they rolled. And
Okay, so they went in and he couldn't make corner?
I must, yeah,
And
but
it rolled the
nobody knows.
Oh, okay, and it rolled the vehicle?
And, but anyhow, Billy, the same doctor was called, one of the guys that Billy went to high school with, had been to Manhattan, and so he called Dr. Diefendorf, and he came out and had an ambulance take him right away to Marysville. And I was alone. Bud was working on Tuttle Creek, so I was all alone. And I always, when the boys were going out for an evening, I would always fix good things that they liked and have it on table for them when they get home. And so it was late, and the phone rang, and I thought they should be here pretty soon. And it was a hospital in Marysville, and he said, do you have two sons? And I said, yes, sir, I do, but where are they? Well, they're here in the hospital. And I said, well, the oldest boy is in the Navy, and he told me if anything ever happened to him, for them to put him in the Army hospital down here. And he said, ma'am, we can't move either one. And so here it's midnight. Bud's working up there at the dam. So I got in the car and drove up there to one of the officers there, the group, or whatever he's called. He went out and they found Bud on the machine he was running and brought him back. But they also at the same time filled my car with gas, because I would have never made it up there. And we got up there, and Billy didn't last very long. He was on oxygen, and but Richard didn't regain conscious till, well, it would have been 3 or 4 days before he, they said they didn't feel he was going to make it. So, okay, when he finally then, I would make trips from here up there real often to Marysville, and because they had to operate on him then and break these things and put the wires in and all that. And he was home here and was getting better to be able to work. He went on construction a little while, and one day he decided that the other boys went to the Navy, he was going to go too. He did, and they sent him to Norfolk, Virginia. And so he called one night, and I had told him, Richard, I'll write to the Navy and see if you can't, because I could tell he was so homesick or something. He was just very low. So I said, I can write or call him or something and see if you can come home for Christmas. And he said, oh no, if I came home, Mom, I don't think I'd ever come back. And so, okay. Then the next day, after he called that one night then and talked, then the next day, they called that he'd taken his life. Mm. And because he wasn't well. And and another thing, the whole side, I got to see the x-rays, this whole side, Mrs. all cracked on his head.
On his skull? Mm-hmm. From the accident?
Mm-hmm.
Mm. Well, it was quite a few years later though, wasn't it? It was that
we lost him.
That you lost Richard. It was
Well, see, he went to
65, and the car accident happened in, I'm sorry.
Well, he was going to go back to school.
59 was when the car accident happened.
It was 59.
That's what I've got.
Yeah, that's right.
And then 65 was when
well, see,
Richard passed.
He had tried to go back to school, and it didn't work because he couldn't write.
So the accident has still messed him up pretty bad.
Oh, and it tore him up so badly. And so he was a changed person. He was everybody just, even the teachers all commented what a sweet child that was. Mm-hmm. But he changed, and because due to head injury. Mm. And so anyway.
Who was? Go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Well, anyway, when he worked on this same boss that had put Bud on Tuttle Creek, he put Richard on construction, and he helped build a big dam out in western Kansas. So he did pretty good on that, I guess. But then he got this feeling that the boys went to the Navy. He thought he would too. So, and they took him immediately.
But this would have been like Vietnam era. When he was. This was during the Vietnam era.
Yes, and it has it, I think, even on the tombstone up there. I think has maybe something about the war on Billy's and.
Yeah, there's always something when you're doing a service. They always put something. There's actually an extra stone they give you.
Yeah,
that's a military
right.
stone.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah. So who was driving when the accident happened?
Well, there is no way that we will ever know. There's no way.
So Richard wouldn't tell after the accident? Didn't tell?
I never talked about it. But the thing about, I said to myself, and when somebody asked me that one day too, well, who was driving the car? I said, do you want to know something? It doesn't matter. Neither one of those boys were out to kill somebody.
Oh, yeah.
And you know what I meant? What difference? It was an accident. See, just like with Bud with little Jimmy.
Right.
And he didn't go to do this. And that whoever was driving.
Well, you could just see there could be some guilt involved. I imagine it had to be hard for Bud. It had to be hard for Bud to have.
Oh, it was.
I can't imagine. How excruciating that would have been.
When I heard, Grandpa Herman himself is the one that told me that Bud said that he had never made it, but there was no way that people knew what I was going through. because I tried to help those that were hurt too.
Yeah.
And I couldn't sleep at night. You know, if you want to know what happened at night, I would be in an airplane trying to find little Jimmy, and he was starving to death. And every night, and I was afraid to go to sleep because I don't want to go through that again.
That's a dream you were having?
That's a dream I had. I was taking him food because he was starving. And it was just where I just didn't want to even shut my eyes for fear I'd go to sleep and do that again. That gradually got away. But it takes a little bit of more sometimes than you've got, but I still want to try to help somebody if they just feel bad.
Yeah.
And so if I can do that, then I thank God for that. Well, I didn't know that we had all this little fellow in our family. Now I, you know, of course you, like I said, you weren't born up that way, and
Right.
you were born down where you were,
Right.
and I never got to really know you kids that well.
Right. Yeah, we would stop by
Were you at?
rarely. We
Let me
stop
see,
by.
when we had that last party, or that one party down there.
Were you at the 80th birthday? Dad's 80th birthday?
No, I didn't get to that one.
Okay, I don't remember.
There was
that.
another one.
There was another one, yes. I do remember another one. Oh, what was that? I did see you. Oh, I don't remember.
Well, I did.
I'll think of it later.
Yeah, that's what I say too.
I can't remember.
A lot of times, I will look, even try to find the answer to what I'm trying to find. Pretty soon, there it is. Why it didn't come out
It's
easier
just the
than
slow
that.
access time, yeah. So you lived on the farm with, okay, there was well, Lewis would have been the dad, right? And so you lived on the farm with Lewis
He'd be
when you
grandpa.
first got married, yeah. Well, no, Lewis would be Chris's dad. Chris's dad, I'm sorry, Chris's dad, but it'd be Bud's dad was Lewis, right?
Yeah, Louis, they call him.
Louis, okay. Now he, let's see. And you moved into the farm when you first got married, right?
Yes.
So I understand that.
Uh-huh.
So then you would have been around Louis a lot then.
I've been around who?
Louis a lot.
Yeah. Oh,
so
yes.
what memories do you have of him?
Well, you know, I think Dad, and of course everybody called him Dad, and Dad really would talk to me, and I was so young at that time, was trying to tell me all the problems that might have happened in the family, and a lot of times I think, you know, if I would have been older, I probably would have known why, because Ed was the older one, and the place where Ed had that farm is the one that Chris and Yulie had then. But what he had done, Ed was and his wife were Catholics, and so Dad Herman then was very liberal with his farms. He was a moneymaker, and that great big crash that came in the 29, whatever, and that ruined him. Took farms away and all his stock and everything.
And you're talking about Louis.
Yeah.
Yes.
And this is the great grandpa, or the grandpa, be your great grandpa.
Mm-hmm.
This is Grandpa Lewis. And so anyway, when he got a notice that that farm wasn't paid for, and he thought all the time that the boy that Ed had been paying for the farm, well then he disowned him. He said, you get right off in there. And then that's when Chris then got onto the farm there. But that would have been years ago, you know, and because they lived down where I lived there before I was there. In there was another little house, and they lived in that little house. And Bud's mother had passed away, and so that left just Dad and Bud then living there. And but golly, off in the house there, and there were 3 beds in there, and Chris and Yulie lived in that when they first got married. But then it had a stove. I never knew how many was going to come out of that little room for breakfast, because they were kind of used to, if I don't know where to go, I'll just go there and crawl in bed. So that's what they did. And
so a lot of the neighbors around would come and stay at your place?
I don't know. These are kind of young fellows they all knew.
Uh-huh.
But they just, if they didn't have this, there was one that kind of was, I don't know where, well, there was, folks lived in Kansas City. Yeah, because we went there one time. It was funny. He'd crawl in bed there just like, you know, but, and they'd come out of there in the morning. I wonder, well, my goodness. Then if in hot weather, when they worked day and night, why then we had a big cave, and the guys that worked in the day, they slept down in that cave, you know. It was kind of funny. I'd go peek out the window. 4 of them. That meant more pancakes, more sausages.
Get the head count, huh? And how many
I
you
had
to
pancakes
cook for?
every morning.
Oh, really? Wow.
And so they couldn't believe that I could handle that much stuff and no older than I was. But I guess that I did pretty good because nobody left. They just stayed there. And in the winter, there was some that wanted to come for board and room and work, you know, and golly, there wasn't much work they did. I was at work. They all had food, but it did bother me. It did bother me. I didn't know what I wanted to do. I was working. When I first got out of high school, Hutchinson, where my aunts lived, thinking I could get a job, you know, and I got down there, and my cousin was the same age as I, so we went out to look for jobs and right after I graduated from high school. Everywhere I went, what experience do you have? And I told myself, I can't tell them that all I'd done is milk cows. That never worked. I just didn't have none.
You just worked hard, though, it sounds like.
I worked hard, but then I finally got a job in a big, where they had a restaurant and kind of a hotel for the big ball players that came. And I'd never seen $100 bills before, and that's where they put me into cash. I laughed. The man that owned it said, "You got to talk up to these guys," and if he only knew, I was scared to death. I couldn't want to talk to nobody. I couldn't count this much money. I wanted to do it right. So I quit. I went back home and went to work for Dad again.
Well,